So here I am in Unity, and I've sped this up 5 times, so it's essentially going really fast. So I started this up because I was thinking some of the concept art sort of had the character kind of approaching this giant sort of wall, and so I thought maybe that's how I would start it, is you sort of approach this this sort of gap. So it's kind of, let's try to make this a little bit more interesting, a little bit more just kind of broken up. Want to create a sense of boundaries, so that's why I sort of pulled in the side there. Try to make this feel a little bit more grand because it just is not feeling right for me right now. And let's go ahead and create a path juncture here. So this is going to force me to choose left or right here. Just smooth this out because that didn't quite feel right. I want to make it feel like there's a little bit more to find if you keep going past the gap, but it's sort of a dead end. So there we go. Let's create some sort of boundaries all the way around so we just don't have cliffs we're walking off of. So here I decided, okay, now I want to actually create a sense of a little bit more non-linearity here. So there's sort of a divergent path right here. And having some divergence in your labyrinth is fine. Essentially still want to keep kind of an overall sense of linear progression. So it's kind of an interesting shape I kind of got out of the terrain, so I'm kind of going to go with that. And now I'm going to create some interesting sort of overhead plane objects, so it feels like I'm going to be sort of going under tunnels, under overheads, and I want to make it feel like the maze is sort of oppressive overhead, almost kind of like tunnels, but not quite. Okay, so here's a small dead end that I'm going to put together. Make it feel like there's a little bit of introspect there, so that's why I like that overhang, so it feels like there's a little cave space to sort of pull you in there. And a little bit of foliage to add some interest, and to create a little bit of ambiguity of, is that actually a dead end or not? So we're going to play it, so this is the thing, you got to play your scene over and over. And that felt a little bit too narrow, so just open that up a little bit. And just create some interesting grand sort of shapes above you. To sort of make it feel like, oh, maybe there's pathways up there that I eventually will get to. Alright. Want some interest in this corner as well. So I've got a piece of foliage that sort of forces you to go to the right, and then that brings you around to look to the left. So now I'm going to have another sort of, this is my second kind of major district. So this is the area that's going to have essentially a lot of these big columns. So that's kind of the identity of this this second space right here. So it feels like you're making some forward progress. That's kind of one of the big things that districts help bring, aside from just a sense of being able to map a space. Create this nice little feeling of, okay, maybe there's a gap, and maybe there's something interesting back there. So it doesn't just feel like a boring corner. It feels like there's life here, and there's things that exist beyond the edges of the gameplay space. I want more of a sense of sort of the overhead plane. more of the sense of, I get sort of a sense of oppression in this first area. And more I'm sort of pulling back from the idea of this giant sort of wall that was there, and more it's like, okay, how do I make it feel like this is kind of an interesting space that you're being drawn into? So creating kind of a sense of mystery and occlusion that just kind of pulls you in and then allows you to explore. So I'm sort of almost changing this first opening section into more of a kind of a foresty district here. So that's kind of the new identity of the beginning of the space here. So a little bit of forest. I'm just doing some adjustments here. And I definitely want to create an actual boundary here in the back, so let's just go ahead and put sort of that together. Yeah, a bit of shrubbery goes a long way. Again, I like to put some shrubs sort of at the corners of turns here, so it helps mask the actual turn, and it forces you to sort of push out away from the turn and sort of consider all your options, if that makes any sense. So a few more well-placed trees, just to kind of fill things in. What about some trees up above? So this is a multi-leveled sort of forest. Up on these big blocks, we've got some possibility for forest, and that's kind of interesting. So adjusting my intro composition, because I didn't like how the first live was. As you can see, I've moved the cowboy several times in this scene because I didn't like exactly where it was. And, so I'll often do that, as I said before, that, I'll often make a scene and I have the intention of one specific composition, and then as I sort of make the scene, I find better places to start my character or to put a doorway, so it forces me to go through that specific that space so that the player can take in that composition that I want. Sometimes it's about a sense of a sort of discovery. I'm creating this space, but I'm also discovering the space as well. So a lot of times there is a lot of surprise to what happens. So it's pretty fun sort of putting a space like this together, because a lot of times you don't really know what you're going to end up with until you're at the end. All right, I keep trying to make that sort of, I've got a bit of an implied space back there to try to entice you to that tree, even though you can't actually get to it. All right, as you can see, that tree is over there, sort of brings you there. Okay, a few more well-placed shrubs just to make things feel a little bit more snaking back in that pathway. Oops. Decided I want some more shrubbery up there as well. It felt kind of barren up there. Some interesting sideways shrubbery. Plants do the most interesting things. There we go. So these bushes down here are sort of forcing the player to sort of snake back and forth as they go through the path, so it doesn't feel like a straightforward shot through here. And then here, even putting basically this is an edge between two different districts. It really makes it feel like you're going into another space. And it also helps if you chose the right path, the path on the right. When you come around into this sort of space with the columns, that edge helps you to understand that it creates a sense of boundary, so that maybe you think twice about going back the wrong way. So just filling in some of these gaps here on the edge. So we don't just have terrain here. We just keep going with this motif of columns. There we go. And now it's taking a long time for my character to run all the way to the end, so I go ahead and move my character here so it's easier to easier to test over and over.